Thus he became at last the most hardy of living men, skilled in their crafts and lore, and was yet more than they, for he was elven-wise, and there was a light in his eyes that when they were kindled, few could endure. Hey everyone, Yoyston here, and I hope you all are doing well, wherever you are in Middle-earth. Today we are taking a look at the most powerful members of the race of men in Middle-earth. Similarly to how we did this for Elves a few weeks ago, I want to mention that it is rather challenging to measure power in Arda, because power takes on so many different forms. Yet this will be less complicated than it was for Elves, for I tend to think there are two types of power generally when it comes to the race of men. Power of mind or lore, and power and strength of arms and abilities as a warrior. Within the context of these categories, one may make arguments of the exact ratings and comparisons between the specific characters, but I will just try to list the most powerful ones and we'll go from there. Then, at the end, I believe there are at least a few characters who are great in both strength of mind or spirit, as well as strength as a warrior, and they are to be regarded, in my opinion, as the most powerful men in Tolkien's works. My friends, thank you all for joining me today. Let's begin our tale. And I should clarify that when I speak about this category, I'm really talking about almost a strength of spirit or will, some sort of magic capabilities, again, like healing or foresight, something like that. I'm categorizing all of this as some sort of internal or mindful strength, but hopefully it'll make sense why as we get into our characters here. Strangely enough, we must therefore start with one who many would maybe not perhaps think of when it comes to powerful men. Denethor, the Steward of Gondor. While he did despair during the War of the Ring, he was able to contend with the will of Sauron directly through the Anor Stone. Through the Palantir, Sauron eventually broke his mind, at least to some degree, but it cannot be denied that this is a sort of mental fortitude that is not to be understated. To that end, while Faramir, his son, is a good warrior, he never really excelled at it. However, it seems that he inherited more of his father's mental fortitude and power in that regard. Some measure of foresight and wisdom, perhaps, as well as some sort of master over doom. Now, Boromir got a tiny bit of this too, but honestly not much. I would put Faramir in this category over Boromir, certainly. We must also mention Isildur, who was able to bind those that would become the Oathbreakers to such an oath. Again, that sort of power, maybe magic, maybe not quite magic, would easily put Isildur in a category like this. Now, even though we don't know too much about him, I would probably add Elros Tar-Miniatur, the first king of Númenor and Elrond's brother, into this category. Again, we don't have much lore to go off of for this, but I must imagine his strength of mind, his ability to guide his people to Númenor by following the star of his father, all of those types of things would probably quite easily land him in this category. I mean, he lived for 500 years, so he must have been quite powerful himself. There were also those that, just like the Elves, were gifted with foresight, such as Tar Palantir and Malbeth the Seer. The former foretold that if the White Tree of Númenor perished, so too would the line of kings come to its end. Isildur saved a sapling of that tree, just as he himself saved the line of kings in his bloodline, and that of his brother Anarion. Malbeth the Seer foretold that Arvedui would become either the last king of Arthedain, or his potential to reunite Arnor and Gondor would come forth, and he would become a great lord. This type of foresight was rare, even among elves, but particularly among men. Now let's jump into our strength of arm warrior characters. These are the greatest warriors among men that we are told of. The best way, really the only way to measure this, is to look at how these characters are spoken of in the lore, and who they defeated in combat. While there are many great warriors, and I will give some honorable mentions here, I want to reserve this category for the truly best. Some honorable mentions would be Boromir, a fierce defender of Gondor. He was certainly incredibly strong, but he was probably honestly alike to many of the greatest warriors that the men of the West had to offer throughout history, but was not greater than them. Éomer and Theoden too, while strong and great as warriors, don't strike me as the best among all men in this category. Éowyn would also be a tough part of this category as well, for she did certainly beat the Witch King in combat. Yet she also had the aid of Merry Brandybuck to do it, so it wasn't really a true duel or single combat, which would easily propel her to be one of the best warriors among the race of men ever. Those Lord of the Rings characters of ours are absolutely great warriors in their strength in combat, worthy of honorable mentions, but I don't think they are quite the best warriors among men. Now, some say that Beren should be ranked among the best, based on his fighting against creatures that he does before meeting Luthien, such as against the kin of Shelob, or his leap against the Sons of Feanor, or in the hunting of the wolf. He certainly accomplishes some great physical feats, but I honestly think I'd also rather give him an honorable mention here as well, before we actually talk about the best warriors. So let's do that. During the fall of Gondolin, Tur easily proved himself as one of the greatest warriors of men. Now, in some tellings of the story, he slew multiple Balrogs with an axe, but I don't really regard that as canon. However, that is the kind of caliber of the warrior that he was that we're talking about here. His whole upbringing and his life that crafted him into that warrior that he became, certainly he was one of the best. Elendil, along with Gil-galad, defeated the Dark Lord Sauron at, potentially, the height of his power during the Second Age. Yes, Elendil had help, but so too did Sauron have help in carrying the One Ring. It is said in the Third Age that none alive in Middle-earth could do what Gil-galad and Elendil did then. It's certainly notable. Turin, with the aid of Gurthang, was one of the deadliest warriors in all the history of Middle-earth. Turin's strength in arms was nearly unmatched. Almost any time he pulled his sword against another character, he won. Now, there are at least two greater warriors that, if they were only warriors, I would put in this category, but I actually have to reserve them for our last category, because they were also powerful mentally, lore-wise, as well as in strength of arms. The greatest, the truly most powerful men in Tolkien's works were those that had both lore knowledge and strength of arms. Now, I've thought a lot about this list, and really there are only two characters among men that I feel make it to the top here. Hurin, named the greatest warrior of men in the history of Middle-earth, is therefore the greatest in strength of arms. Yet he also directly opposed the will of the Dark Lord, and for many years his mental fortitude stood strong against darkness itself, even as he was cursed to watch his house fall over many years. His valor in combat during the Battle of Unnumbered Tears, as well as earlier in his life when he helped free the land of Hithlum, just depicts how incredible he was. While Hurin's tale ended in tragedy, and he did succumb to darkness somewhat in the end, he set the standard of power both in arm and heart for men going forward into the next age. Hurin may certainly be considered the greatest among men, but there is one who, in my opinion, is still more powerful than even he is. In my mind, of course, the most powerful man in the history of Middle-earth was Aragorn, King Elisar, son of Arathorn. We have so many moments in the lore to prove this, as it might seem since he came during later days that his power was perhaps lesser than his ancestors. However, as his power drew upon the strength of his ancestors, the gifts that were passed to him, as well as the grit of his own spirit and arm, he easily became the greatest. He grew up around the elves, learning their lore and wisdom. Aragorn lived in the wild for a long time, becoming the hardiest of living men. He also became a strong warrior, one who had victory in nearly, if not every battle he was in. He commanded the Oathbreakers and had the courage to call upon them when the time was right. Aragorn also had the hands of a healer, and his will faced Sauron directly in a Palantir. While he might not have been the strongest warrior directly, he certainly rivals and overcomes Hurin overall when it comes to the strength that a person can have in mind, will, that sort of magic, but I'm not sure if I want to call it magic. The ability to call upon the Oathbreakers and heal people, for instance. Something not everyone could do, but he could. As well as his loreful knowledge. But also, again, he is an insanely great warrior. So, with all of that combined, I think Aragorn really does take it for being the most powerful man in Tolkien's works. And there we have it, my friends. We have our most powerful men when it comes to lore wisdom, or strength of mind, and strength of arms in battle, as well as both of those things. But what do you all think? Was there anyone that I missed that I should have included here? Let me know what you think in the comments below. And so, my friends, we come to the end of our tale on who are the most powerful men in Tolkien's works. From this tale, we see that strength takes many forms, and we must work to broaden our horizons and become powerful in many measures, all in the service of the world around us. Thank you all so much for watching. I hope you all enjoyed this. If you did, please be sure to hit that like button and share this with a friend. If you'd like to support the channel, please consider getting some candles from our friends Mythologie Candles, or order some Weta or United Cutlery Lord of the Rings sword statues and other replicas from Castle Kon, who does international shipping, and use the code WEST at checkout, and please check out our merch. Join our memberships and Patreon for access to our Discord, as well as our monthly podcast. Thanks to our Valor tier patrons and YouTube members for making all of this possible: Ed Patterson, Comic Nut 64, Brian Hunley, Peter Shepard, John Hume, Reese Jenkins, Arthur Merlin, Theodore, Andrew Carlisle, and Zoomi. Please subscribe and hit that bell button to join the Men of the West and all of the Free Peoples today. And I'll see you all again next week with a video on Morgul and other dark magic in Middle-earth. A perfect video for Halloween, I think. My friends, thank you all so much for joining me on this adventure. Until the next one.